Of you going to where the protesters were in front of the Ferguson Police Department, and you were on a car, and you're speaking to the people. Why did you feel the need to do that?
I felt the need to do that because, one, like we just said, they never addressed us, and two, you've heard our pleas and our cries for everything to go the way it should be. And then third of all, we heard this, and it was just like like I had been shot, like you shooting me now. Just no respect, no sympathy, nothing. And so my emotions were raging, and I had to go up there just to let them know, you just really don't care, do you? And why don't you?
That is the piece of the interview that we just played. A little bit more for you. That is Mikebrown's mother. She and Mikebrown's father just sat down with Sonny Hostin. So let me bring in two gentlemen by my side, criminal defense attorney Eric Guster and HLN legal analyst Joey Jackson. I'd love to have each of you first just reacting to what you just heard. Eric?
That's a grieving mother.
Yeah.
Whenever you have a situation where a son has been killed, you have to deal with the family, and mothers have a special bond with their children. And to know that you had to bury your child, that's one of the worst feelings that a parent can have. And that's what that mother is dealing with, and it's heartbreaking.
The fact that she says, Joey, that her son did not go for the gun.
I mean, you know, any mother obviously is going to be protective over the person that they gave birth to. And mothers, you know, who do we look to? Who do we respect? Who do we admire? Who is our everything? Our moms, you know? And so certainly for a son to be taken away, it's certainly a sad, tragic thing, no matter the circumstance. And when particularly Brooke, in this circumstance, she's just got to be devastated. And so you could see where she would say that.
She's devastated. She reacted specifically to Officer Darren Wilson's interview on ABC News. We have just one piece of that. Roll it, Alan.
I was so shocked by the whole interaction because this was escalated so quickly from a simple request to now a fight for survival. And it still doesn't make sense to me why someone would act in that way and be so mad instantly.
Officer Darren Wilson says he has a quote-unquote clean conscience over the shooting. He says after the first shot, Brown ran away, but he followed Brown, not to arrest him, but to see where Brown was going as more officers were on the way. Officer Wilson then says Brown stopped, he turned toward him, and began running toward Wilson. He then says he shot at Mikebrown again.
After that, I paused and I again yelled, you know, stop, get on the ground, giving him the opportunity to stop. And he ignored all the commands and he just kept running. And so after he kept running again, I shot another series of shots, and at least one of those hit him because I saw the flinch. And he stopped. I stopped, and I said, you know, get on the ground, get on the ground. Well, this time he's about 15 feet away. So I start backpedaling because he's just getting too close, and he's still not stopping after, from what I...
You were backpedaling?
Yes, away from him. Because I was like, he's already running through these shots. I mean, they weren't phasing him. It didn't matter to him. And he was looking through me, and as he gets to that 15 feet after I fired the second round of shots, he gets to about 8 to 10 feet, and as he does that, he kind of starts to lean forward like he's going to tackle me. And 8 to 10 feet is close. I mean, if he's going to tackle me, he's going to tackle me at that point. And I looked down my barrel of my gun, and I fired, and what I saw was his head, and that's where it went.
Eric, let me just begin with you. As a criminal defense attorney, you have to imagine he had much prep with lawyers, right? Yes, not only what to wear, how to sit, but specifically what to say, and also what not to say, mindful of a federal investigation still ongoing. What couldn't he say?
He could not say that he would have done something differently in those circumstances. He has to stick with his story that he had no choice but to shoot Mikebrown. That is the line of questioning and the line of thought that he has to be consistent with. Because if he says that he could have used his taser, or he says that he could have used his baton in order to subdue him, that goes to the legal question whether he should be civilly liable for the death of Mikebrown.
Because you have hearing folks, you know, after that interview was played, saying he's not remorseful enough, he could have been more effusive. There are legal reasons for that.
Well, certainly there are, Brooke, but remember, he has to keep, there are two things in mind that his defense attorneys are telling him constantly and repeatedly, and it's like a mantra. The one thing is imminent fear, imminent threat. The second thing is reasonableness. And so certainly when he's speaking about what happened, Brooke, he's going to speak to the issue of, I was in imminent fear for my life. There was no reasonable alternative. And under those circumstances, any police officer would have done exactly as I did. So that's the issue. That's the narrative. Now, what happens, Brooke, is that, remember the grand jury, and I know this is what the interview he was giving on TV, but when you're in a grand juries are very good in terms of acquiring information, but sifting out the information, they're not the best places to do that. And what I'm speaking to is when he testified in the grand jury. When you give testimony at trial, for example, Brooke, you have attorneys, you know, very good attorneys, like Eric Guster, who will go in there and they, you know, they'll cross-examine you and they will question everything you say. So you say you have injuries, sir. Let's show the injuries. That's a significant injury that you had that caused this to occur? Is that what you're saying? So all I'm suggesting is, in a grand jury, certainly it gives an opportunity to get the information out, but to the extent that you're not pressed on what you had to say.
And that was Ben Crump's point yesterday, challenging the credibility. And on that point, quick break. Stay with me, gentlemen, please, because I want to play some more sound. We heard the comparison from the grand jury testimony from the officer comparing Mikebrown to specifically Hulk Hogan.
Yes.
Let's talk about that on the other side of this break. Stay with me.
It was like a 5-year-old holding on to Hulk Hogan. That's just how big this man was.
Hulk Hogan?
He was very large, very powerful man.
You're a pretty big guy.
Yeah, I'm above average. I'm about 210, 215, but you know, from what I've heard, he was around 290.
All right, so we know he said that in grand jury testimony. Now here we hear it from this police officer sitting across from ABC News' George Stephanopoulos. Let me bring these two back in, Eric Guster and Joey Jackson. On that point, you wanted to specifically get on that because you say to be able to paint that picture, Hulk Hogan compared to a 5-year-old, that is his comparison. Brilliant for the grand jurors.
It was brilliant for his defense, because when people need an image in their minds of this situation, exactly what happened in that car and out there in Ferguson, now they have painted a picture that this is Hulk Hogan. This is an image that a lot of the people who are on the grand jury grew up with. Hulk Hogan, the huge wrestler who were throwing people all over rings and manhandling all of his opponents. Now, and he's a 5-year-old wrestling Hulk Hogan. So he, in his mind, had no choice but to shoot Mikebrown. That's the image he wanted to leave with those grand jurors.
But, I mean, George pressed him. Is that a fair comparison?
Well, what comes back to imminent fear of threat, right, of serious bodily injury or death, and reasonableness of my behavior, which is why I agree with Eric. You paint the mental picture that everyone could relate to. They relate to it, and you know what? Those two legal issues regarding justification, self-defense, imminent threat, reasonable behavior, there it is.
And all he needed were 4 people who believed him.
Yeah.
Only 4, because he needed 9 votes out of 12 to get an indictment. He just needed...
And he got it.
4. Exactly.
Here's my other question, because you, again, have prepped your clients. I mean, in terms of sitting Darren Wilson down, you are saying his lawyers talked to him in such detail, down to wear a tie or not.
Everything that he does in reference to those grand jurors, they're going to watch it. They're going to look at how he's speaking, how he's sitting, how he's presenting himself, what words he says, just like the Hulk Hogan reference. He felt in an imminent fear for his life. Those things will stick with them because he may have worn something that made him look smaller. No, those are the images that they needed to see, because when you go to trial, whether it's a grand jury or a jury trial, those people are paying attention to every single detail, because that's the biggest thing that's happening in their lives. They're in grand jury, they're looking at what you're wearing, what you're doing, what you're saying, and how
even in an interview with George Stephanopoulos, he is, I'm sure, being told, you know, no tie, no jacket, black or brown, blue button down, right?
Not even in, Brooke, especially in an interview like that, certainly. And not to suggest anything's wrong with that. I mean, we as lawyers, that's the job that you do, to counsel your client to put the best foot forward.
Joey, what about just the timing of the interview? I mean, it wasn't even 24 hours after the grand jury decision was made public. And, you know, when you hear from the parents of Mikebrown, obviously it's crushing for them. I'm sure it would be, I would imagine it would be crushing for them hearing him speak any time of the year.
Sure.
But the day after, I can understand it perhaps from the police officer's side. This is finally his chance to speak up and share his side. good call to do it then, or?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can make the argument certainly that, as we talked about before, Brooke, you have a grieving mom, and in light of that, certainly you want to respect the fact that, you know, what she's going through, and even if he's cleared, as he was by a grand jury, you know, perhaps it's not the appropriate time, but you knew it was going to come out at some time, and therefore, you know, information like this doesn't stay bottled up too long, and so the decision was made to move it forward to see what he had to say.
Okay.
And with them releasing the transcripts, his version was already out there, so he wanted to put a face with his words.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Statements. Eric Guster and Joey Jackson, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Really, really appreciate it.